The dim hum of the station's life support filled the observation deck like a distant heartbeat. Captain Alara Voss stood at the viewport, her fingers tracing the cold edge of the console as stars streaked by in silent judgment. At 42 she was all lean muscle and unyielding resolve, the kind forged from years captaining salvage runs through the belt. Her crew called her Iron Alara behind her back, not for cruelty but for the way she bent steel with sheer will. Today, though, even her grit felt thin against the void. Beside her, Jax Harlan slouched in the co-pilot's chair, fiddling with a diagnostic tablet. He was the wiry engineer, 28 and quick with a quip, his dark hair perpetually tousled from zero-G naps. "Reckon this is the part where we say, 'It's not you, it's the galaxy'?" he muttered, eyes flicking to the comms panel. No response from Earth. Not a whisper in hours. Alara didn't turn. "Focus on the scans, Jax. If the relay's down, we improvise." Her voice was steady but her jaw tightened. The station, Orion's Echo, orbited a nameless gas giant on the fringe of human space. A refueling outpost, really, a forgotten buoy in the black. They docked 2 days ago for routine maintenance, but routine had shattered when the first ping from Sol went unanswered. Earth, the cradle, gone quiet. Billions of voices silenced. In the corner, Dr. Lena Reyes monitored the sensor array, her tablet glowing with data streams. Mid-30s, cautious to a fault, she adjusted her glasses and frowned at the readouts. Lena was the thinker, the one who mapped risks before charging in. "Radiation levels nominal," she said softly, as if afraid to disturb the stars. "But the interference pattern, it's artificial. Like a blanket over the system." Her hands trembled slightly as she typed, betraying the calm she projected. Jax snorted, leaning back. "Artificial? You mean someone's jamming the signal? Out here?" He tapped his tablet, pulling up a holographic map of the sector. Red blips marked debris fields from old skirmishes with the fringe colonies, but nothing pointed to this. Alara finally pivoted, crossing her arms. The deck's emergency lights cast long shadows, turning her face into a mask of determination. "Doesn't matter what. We came for parts, but now we're the eyes on this." Lena run a deep probe toward Sol. "Jax, prep the shuttle for a jump if we need to ghost out." She glanced at the viewport again, where the gas giant swirled in bruised purples. Somewhere in that mess, their distress beacon pulsed weakly. But who was listening? Lena hesitated, her fingers hovering. "Captain, if it's a quarantine or worse, then we find out." Alara cut in, not harshly but with the weight of command. "We're all that's left in range. Earth doesn't get to vanish without a fight." Jax grinned faintly, masking his unease. Iron Lady. Shuttle's yours in 10. He stood, stretching, and headed for the access hatch, his boots magnetized to the deck with soft clunks. As the hatch hissed shut behind him, Lena met Alara's gaze. The doctor's eyes held a quiet plea, measured twice, cut once. But Alara only nodded toward the console. "Let's wake the dead, document. See what silence really means." The probe launched with a muffled thrum, vanishing into the void. Minutes stretched, the hum of the station the only sound. Then, the first garbled fragment crackled through, voices, distorted, rising from the chamber of stars. Not Earth's. Something colder. The dim hum of the council chamber's translators filled the air like a distant storm, each alien tongue warping into something almost comprehensible. Alara gripped the edge of her console, her knuckles pale against the sleek alloy. She'd been Earth's junior envoy for 3 cycles now, shuttling between the stars to broker trade pacts that kept the fragile alliances intact. But today the voices around her rose not in negotiation, but in accusation. "Earth's silence is an insult," snarled the Vorith delegate, its segmented limbs clacking against the floor. The creature's eyes, multifaceted like shattered obsidian, fixed on Alara. "We demand reparations for the delayed shipments. Your world's inaction mocks the compact." Beside her, Jax leaned back in his chair, his flight jacket creased from too many hasty repairs. The pilot's easy grin was gone, replaced by a tight line of his mouth. He'd flown her here from the outer rim, dodging asteroid fields and pirate scouts, always with that cocky assurance that humans could improvise their way out of anything. Now he shot her a sidelong glance, whispering just loud enough for her earpiece. They're bluffing. Vorth bluff like they breathe. But if Earth's not picking up. Elara nodded fractionally, her mind racing. The last transmission from Sol had been routine, cargo manifests, diplomatic pleasantries. Then nothing. No ping from the orbital relays, no automated beacons. It had started as a glitch, or so the techs assured her during the hyperspace jump. But hours into the session, the chamber's central holo-display flickered with error codes, and the other delegates' patience frayed. The Krell ambassador, a towering figure of iridescent scales, interjected with a rumble that vibrated the seats. Silence from Earth disrupts all. Our fleet's idle, resources dwindle. Envoy, what say you? Its voice was measured, but the undercurrent of threat hung heavy, like the gravity of its homeworld. Elara stood, forcing steadiness into her legs. She wasn't trained for this. Crisis diplomacy fell to the seniors back on Luna base. But with the lines dead, she was all they had. Ambassador, delegate, the outage is under investigation. Human engineering is resilient. We'll trace it to a solar flare or relay failure. In the meantime, I propose we extend the current packs by one cycle with mutual aid provisions. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Jax's foot tapped under the table, a silent countdown. He'd seen blackouts before, on frontier runs where comms dropped and you were left with nothing but your wits and a jury-rigged scanner. If it's sabotage, he muttered into the link, we're sitting ducks here. The Vorith delegate's claws scraped the podium, dismissing her words with a hiss. Words? We tire of human promises. Prove your ingenuity or face embargo. Tension coiled in Alara's chest as the chamber's lights dimmed for the recess vote. Allies shifted uneasily, rivals smirked from shadowed alcoves. She caught Jax's eye again. He was already palming his personal comm, fingers dancing over a hidden interface. No official channels, just the black market mods he'd installed back on Titan Station. If anyone could punch through the void, it was him. As the delegates filed out, the chamber's vast dome arched overhead, etched with constellations from 100 worlds. Elara lingered, staring at the blank holo-display where Earth's blue marble should have glowed. Silence wasn't just absence, it was a void that pulled everything toward it. And in that pull she felt the first real stir of doubt. Had they finally pushed too far, their grit meeting something unbreakable? Jax sidled up, voice low. Got a weak signal bounce off a relay near Proxima. Faint, but it's something. We slip out during the break, I can hotwire a shuttle and boost it manually. She hesitated, glancing at the guarded exits. The compact forbade unauthorized departures, but with Earth's voice gone, rules felt like echoes. Risky. If they catch us. Then we improvise. His grin flickered back, sharp as a knife edge. Like always. The recess bell tolled, a deep vibration through the floor. Elara nodded, heart pounding in rhythm with the chamber's fading hum. Whatever had silenced Earth, they wouldn't wait for it to swallow them whole. The dim glow of the habitat module's emergency lights cast long shadows across the bulkheads, turning the cramped space into a labyrinth of half-seen edges. Elena wiped sweat from her brow, her fingers leaving a streak of grime on her skin. The air recyclers hummed faintly, struggling against the thickening haze of dust that had seeped in from the breach. She glanced at Marcus, who knelt by the jury-rigged console, his wiry frame tense as he probed the wiring with a multi-tool. Any luck? She asked, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. The sandstorm outside had howled for hours now, burying their rover under tons of Martian regolith. Without it, they were stranded, and the base's supplies wouldn't last another week. Marcus grunted, not looking up. Fuses are shot. Storm's EMP pulses fried half the circuits. If I can bypass this relay. A spark jumped, and he cursed under his breath, shaking his hand. His optimism, usually a spark in these digs, felt brittle now, like the cracked visor on his helmet from the earlier scramble. From the corner, Dr. Lin watched them both, her tablet clutched like a shield. The geologist's sharp eyes darted between the console and the viewport, where red dunes blurred into oblivion. We can't keep rerouting power like this, she said, her tone clipped, cautious as always. The HAB's integrity is down to 87%. One more surge and we'll have more than dust to worry about. Elena nodded, forcing herself to move. She grabbed a spare panel from the storage locker, its edges rough against her calloused palms. The three of them, her, the engineer, the scientist, had been the only ones crazy enough to push for this extended survey on the edge of Valles Marineris. Now, with Earth a silent speck in the comms blackouts, their gamble hung by these fraying threads. She slotted the panel into place beside Marcus, their shoulders brushing in the tight confines. Then we make it count. What's the plan B? He straightened, wiping his hands on his jumpsuit, a faint grin cracking his dirt-streaked face. Plan B is you holding this steady while I hotwire the secondary battery. Lynn, you got those schematics up? We need to isolate the storm's interference pattern. Lynn tapped her screen, projecting a holographic overlay that flickered to life between them. Lines of code and wiring diagrams danced in the air, illuminating their faces with blue light. The storm's electromagnetic fury was no mindless rage. It pulsed in rhythms tied to the planet's magnetic field, a natural trap that had claimed unmanned probes before. But humans didn't quit on first failure. Elena braced the panel as Marcus worked, her muscles aching from the effort. Outside, the wind screamed, but inside, their voices rose in focused rhythm. Questions, adjustments, a shared defiance against the Red World's indifference. Hours blurred into a tense vigil. The first bypass held for 10 minutes before another pulse hit, screens flickering like dying stars. Marcus slammed a fist against the console, but Elena caught his eye, her gaze unyielding. Again, she said simply. Lynn adjusted the filters on her tablet, murmuring calculations under her breath. They adapted, splicing in insulation from spare envirosuits, layering their ingenuity over the machine's frailty. By the time the storm's peak ebbed, a weak signal pierced the static, a ping from the orbital relay faint but alive. Elena exhaled, leaning back against the bulkhead. The rover's outline was still buried, but now they had a line to the supply drop. Marcus clapped her shoulder, his wits surfacing in a wry chuckle. See? Earth's silence just means she's got faith in us. Lynn smiled faintly, packing away her tablet, but her eyes lingered on the viewport. The dunes had shifted, revealing a glint of something unnatural beneath, perhaps an ancient outcrop, or the edge of their real discovery. Whatever it was, it waited, a promise amid the cost of their isolation. Elena gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles whitening as the chamber's hum deepened into a growl. The air grew thick, charged with static that tugged at her hair like invisible fingers. Beside her, Marcus hunched over the makeshift scanner, his fingers flying across the cracked screen. It's not a malfunction, he muttered, voice steady despite the sweat beading on his forehead. The voices are syncing with the core frequency. Like they're waking up. Dr. Reyes, ever the cautious one, paced the narrow walkway, her tablet clutched like a shield. We should pull back. The readings show seismic instability building. One wrong pulse, and this whole section collapses. Her words hung sharp in the dim light, the walls pulsing with faint bioluminescent veins that mimicked a heartbeat. Captain Hale shook his head, his jaw set in that familiar line of unyielding resolve. We came this far. Earth's relay is silent, but if we don't map this chamber we'll lose the signal window entirely. He glanced at Elena, his second in command, seeking the nod he knew she'd give. She met his eyes, the weight of their isolation pressing down, 3 months since the last transmission from home, and now this alien echo chamber taunting them with fragments of forgotten languages. The plan from the previous shift had been simple. Isolate the voice patterns, decode a safe path through the labyrinth below. But the core had resisted, its energy field scrambling their tools mid-scan. Now, as the hum escalated, cracks spiderwebbed across the floor, dust sifting down like ash from a dying star. Override engaged, Marcus announced, his wits surfacing in a grim half-smile. Think of it as hot wiring a ghost ship. If it works, we get a map. If not, well, at least we'll go out with style. He tapped the final sequence and the console sparked, blue arcs dancing across his hands. He didn't flinch, just held steady. The chamber responded. Voices rose in a chorus, not hostile but insistent, layering over one another in harmonics that vibrated through their bones. Elena felt it in her chest, a pull toward the central pedestal where the core throbbed brighter. Images flickered on the scanner, not data but visions. Vast ships drifting through nebulae, beings of light debating in silent councils. Earth's silence, she realized, wasn't absence. It was a choice, a deliberate quiet amid the cosmic din. "Look," Reyes whispered, pointing to the walls. The veins pulsed in rhythm, forming patterns that resolved into a holographic map, etched in glowing script. But as it clarified, so did the danger. A chasm yawned open beneath them, the floor tilting with a groan of ancient stone. Hale lunged, grabbing Reyes by the arm as she teetered on the edge. "Move to the access tunnel." Elena hauled Marcus up, the scanner slipping from his grasp but catching it mid-fall. They scrambled across the fracturing platform, the voices swelling to a crescendo that drowned their shouts. In the tunnel's mouth, they collapsed against the cool metal walls, breaths ragged. The chamber behind them shuddered, a section crumbling into the void with a thunderous roar. Dust billowed, sealing the entrance in a haze. "We lost the direct link," Marcus said, wiping grime from his face. His eyes, though, sparkled with that engineer's fire. Reyes rubbed her bruised arm, her caution cracking into reluctant admiration. "That was too close. If Hale hadn't—" "Teamwork," Hale cut in, clapping her shoulder. "Always." But his gaze lingered on the sealed chamber, the voices now muffled echoes. The map showed a deeper level, riddled with hazards, but also a relay point that might punch through to Earth. The cost was clear, their dwindling power cells, the risk of no return. Yet in the quiet that followed, Elena sensed the shift, not defeat but determination forged sharper. As they regrouped, plotting the next descent, the weight of silence from home pressed heavier. The chamber's voices had risen, demanding answer. Earth's reply, whatever it was, would have to wait for them to bridge the gap. Elena gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles whitening as the chamber's holographic display flickered erratically. The alien delegates' voices had risen to a cacophony earlier, their bioluminescent skins pulsing with agitation. But now an uneasy quiet hung in the air. Earth's silence wasn't defiance, it was absence. The comms array had gone dark hours ago, severed by the solar flare that had crippled half the station's systems. She glanced at Marcus, her engineer, who was elbow-deep in a tangle of conduits, sweat beading on his forehead despite the dropping temperature. "Any luck?" she whispered, though the words felt swallowed by the vastness of the observation deck. The stars outside the viewport spun lazily, the station's rotation unchecked since the stabilizers failed. Marcus grunted, pulling a sparking relay free. "This flare fried the backups. We're running on fumes here. If we don't reroute power soon, the whole grid collapses. Delegates, us, everything." His hands moved with the precision of someone who'd patched hull breaches on frontier haulers, not this polished diplomatic outpost. Brave in the face of vacuum, cautious with the unknowns of alien tech. Across the deck, Kira, the xenolinguist, paced near the sealed doors, her tablet clutched like a shield. She was the witty one, quick with a quip to defuse tension. But now her eyes darted to the shadows where the alien aides huddled. "They're whispering again. Probably debating if we're worth salvaging or just ejecting into the void. Earth's not responding because they think we've gone rogue." Elena straightened, forcing calm into her voice. The challenge wasn't just the failing systems. It was the fragile alliance hanging by threads of trust. The Vexery delegation had come seeking Earth's aid against a resource shortage crippling their worlds, rare isotopes only mind and soul's belt. But, with comms down, the humans looked isolated, suspicious. One wrong move, and the deal crumbled, stranding the team and dooming the Vexery to collapse. "Focus on the fix," Elena said, her tone steady, adventurous spark igniting despite the dread. She was the anchor, the one who believed in grit over gadgets. "Kira, translate their murmurs. See if we can buy time." Kira nodded, activating her earpiece. The Vexery's clicks and hums filtered through, layered with urgency. "They're scared. Their ship's life support is tied to ours, symbiotic docking. If we fail, they suffocate first." Marcus yanked another wire, sparks dancing like fireflies. His early plan, to hotwire the auxiliary generators, had backfired spectacularly, overloading a secondary line and dropping lights to emergency red. Now the air grew thick, recyclers whining. He wiped his brow, eyes narrowing on a jury-rigged bypass. Got an idea. Risky, but if I siphon from the inertial dampeners. Elena leaned in, the hum of failing machinery underscoring her words. Do it. We're not dying out here whispering excuses. As Marcus worked, the deck shuddered, a low groan from stressed metal. Kira's tablet beeped. Vexery leader, Thalix, approaching, his tendrils quivering. Humans, he intoned through the translator, voice like grinding stones. Your world's quiet. Explain. Elena met his gaze, the chamber's dim glow casting long shadows across his iridescent form. Tension coiled, but she stepped forward, hand extended, not in plea but partnership. Our silence is a storm's doing, Thalix. But we're answering now with action. Thalix hesitated, then extended a tendril touching the console. His species interfaced biologically, minds syncing with machines. Show me. Marcus connected the bypass with a final twist, power surging in fits. Lights flickered brighter, recyclers humming to life. But the cost hit hard. A warning klaxon blared as the station lurched, rotation speeding unevenly. Alarms screamed, structural integrity compromised. Kira's wit cut through. Well, that's one way to spin the negotiation. Elena braced against the tilt, heart pounding. The flare's damage lingered, a scar on their fragile triumph. Earth's voice might return, but for now human hands held the line, gritty, unyielding. The dim hum of the auxiliary generators filled the corridor like a distant heartbeat, each pulse reminding Lena that time was slipping away. She pressed her back against the cold metal bulkhead, her breath steady despite the ache in her side from the earlier breach. The air recyclers wheezed, struggling against the thinning oxygen, but she focused on the tablet in her hands, its screen flickering with schematics of the derelict station. They're closing in, whispered Jax from the junction ahead, his voice a low rasp over the comms. He was the cautious one, always calculating angles, but even he couldn't hide the edge of fear now. His rifle's scope glinted as he peered around the corner, tracking the shadows of the automated drones that had turned against them. Lena nodded to herself, tracing a new route on the display. The original plan, to reroute power through the core conduit, had backfired spectacularly, awakening the station's defense protocols. Now those same drones, relics from a forgotten mining op, patrolled with lethal precision, their laser cutters whining like angry insects. The stakes weren't abstract. One wrong move and the failing life support would claim them before the machines did. Mark, you still with engineering? She asked, keeping her tone even. Mark, the wiry engineer with a wit as sharp as his tools, had been silent for too long. A crackle, then his voice, barely. These conduits are fused solid, centuries of neglect. But I've got a workaround. If Jax can buy me 10 minutes, I can jury-rig the vents to flood their circuits with coolant. Jax snorted softly. 10 minutes? That's a lifetime out here. Lena, cover me, I'm drawing them off. Before she could protest, he was moving, a shadow slipping into the red emergency glow. Lena holstered the tablet and gripped her multi-tool, its arc welder humming to life. The corridor stretched like a vein in the station's underbelly, walls scarred by micrometeorites and time. She advanced, boots silent on the grated floor, the weight of their dwindling air supply pressing like an invisible hand. The first drone rounded the bend with a mechanical screech, its sensor array sweeping the dark. Lena fired a burst from the welder, the blue arc sizzling against its chassis. Sparks flew, illuminating the jagged tear in its side, a momentary weakness from the earlier explosion. It lurched but didn't fall. Jax, flank it, she called, dodging as its cutter arms slashed the air where her head had been. He emerged from a side vent, slamming a makeshift EMP grenade, cobbled from spare parts, against its underbelly. The device popped with a muffled thud, and the drone seized, lights flickering out like dying stars. But the noise echoed, summoning echoes from deeper in the station. 2 more inbound, Jax reported, wiping sweat from his brow. His eyes met hers in the gloom, a silent acknowledgement of the cost. Their escape pod was one hull breach away from uninhabitable, and Earth's silence on the comms meant no rescue was coming. Mark's voice cut through, coolant's flowing, drones are glitching. But the surge is unstable. If it overloads, we lose everything. Lena pushed forward, the air growing thicker, metallic on her tongue. They had to reach the core chamber, seal the breach, and signal home. One step at a time. Through the tightening noose of failing systems and relentless machines. The station groaned around them, a beast stirring from slumber, and she wondered if their ingenuity would be enough to quiet it. Elena gripped the armrest of her seat in the dim alcove, the hum of the station's life support a faint vibration through the bulkhead. The chamber's debate had spilled over into this side room, where the real negotiations clawed forward without the spectacle of holographic displays. Across from her, Crix, the avian diplomat from the Nest Worlds, paced with clipped steps, his feathers ruffled in agitation. "Your silence in there is a weapon, Elena," he hissed, his beak clicking. "But it's cutting both ways. The Vorith delegation smells weakness." She nodded, keeping her voice steady. "Patience isn't weakness, Crix. It's strategy." Her aide, Tomas, sat beside her, fingers flying over a datapad, cross-referencing trade manifests. He was the cautious one, always double-checking, his brow furrowed now as he muttered about fluctuating dilithium yields from the outer colonies. The door hissed open, admitting Lyra, the wiry engineer from the Core Alliance, her exosuit scarred from the recent skirmish with the rogue asteroid field. She'd been their wild card, the one who jury-rigged the shuttle's shields when the debris storm hit. "They're pushing for the blockade vote," Lyra said, sliding into a chair. "If Earth doesn't counter with the fusion tech proposal, we'll lose the outer rim routes. Permanently." Elena leaned forward, the weight of the decision pressing like the vacuum outside. The external challenge wasn't just politics, it was survival. The Voritha's resource grabs had choked supply lines, leaving human outposts on the brink of blackout. One wrong word in the chamber, and Earth's fragile foothold in the galaxy could shatter. "Tomas, run the sim again. If we offer the modified warp coils, does it tip the scales without exposing our core tech?" He tapped furiously, the screen flickering with projections. "Marginal gain, but wait." His eyes widened. "The Nest World's data, Crix, your migration patterns align with our old solar wind models. If we bundle that with the coils, it creates a shared navigation net. Vorith can't block what they can't predict." Crix stopped pacing, tilting his head. "Clever. But they'll demand veto rights on deployment." Lyra snorted, cracking her knuckles. "Let them try. I've got prototypes that could outmaneuver their fleet in a sandstorm." Tension coiled in the room, the air thick with unspoken risks. The chance that sharing tech might invite espionage or worse, accelerate the Voritha's expansion into human space. Elena stood, smoothing her uniform. "Then we adapt. No grand speeches. We walk in, present the net as mutual benefit, and watch them squirm." She met each gaze. Crix's sharp curiosity, Tomas's quiet resolve, Lyra's defiant grin. The plan wasn't foolproof. A single leak in the chamber's feeds could unravel it. But in the face of rising voices demanding Earth's surrender, silence had bought them this moment. Now ingenuity would answer. They filed back toward the chamber, the corridor's lights casting long shadows. Elena felt the pull of the stars through the viewport, a reminder of the outposts waiting, dark, hungry, but unbroken. One step, calculated and shared, and they might just forge a path through the storm. Alex gripped the edge of the console, his knuckles whitening as the chamber's holographic displays flickered erratically. The air hummed with the low thrum of failing stabilizers, and the voices of the council, those alien delegates with their clicking mandibles and resonant tones, rose in a cacophony that drowned out the emergency klaxons. Jamie stood beside him, her face pale under the stuttering lights, fingers flying across her datapad to reroute power. "It's the core relay," she muttered, voice tight. "If we don't isolate it soon, the whole debate feed collapses. No more transmissions to the fleets." Zara, the avian diplomat from the Elysian flock, perched on a nearby ledge, her feathers ruffled in agitation. She tilted her head, eyes gleaming with that sharp intelligence humans always underestimated. "Your ingenuity shines in crisis, Alex, but this silence from Earth, it's as if your world holds its breath." The others sense weakness. Her beak clicked softly, a gesture of solidarity amid the chaos. The challenge had escalated faster than anyone predicted. A rival faction from the Vorath Enclave had sabotaged the chamber's neural network during the recess, turning the grand debate into a potential blackout. With the cosmic rift widening beyond the station, threatening to swallow supply lines and isolate entire sectors, the stakes weren't just political anymore. One wrong surge, and the chamber could vent into vacuum, costing lives, not just arguments. Alex nodded to Jamie, ignoring the sweat beading on his brow. Bypass the secondary nodes. Use the auxiliary vents. We'll vent the overload heat manually if we have to. His voice carried that steady grit, the kind forged in Earth's forgotten outposts, where ingenuity meant survival without fanfare. He glanced at the Vorath delegate across the floor, its segmented body coiled in smug anticipation, tentacles tapping a rhythm of victory. Jamie hesitated, her cautious nature flaring. That could fry the environmental controls. We're already low on oxygen recyclers. But she punched in the commands anyway, trusting the plan because arguing under pressure never fixed a failing system. The console sparked once, twice, then stabilized with a reluctant whine. Holograms sharpened, the debate feed resuming just as the chamber's voices swelled again. Zara leaped down, wings half spread for balance. Clever adaptation. The rift's edge is probing our shields now. Your silence bought us time, but they'll push harder. She shot a glance at the Vorath, who recoiled slightly, its facade cracking. Alex straightened, the lingering hum in his ears a reminder that Earth's quiet wasn't absence, but choice, a deliberate pause that forced the galaxy to confront its own noise. The cost lingered in the dimmed lights, the faint tremor underfoot, but the transmission held. For now. Captain Alara Voss gripped the console's edge, her knuckles whitening against the hum of the auxiliary bridge. The air recyclers wheezed, straining to filter the acrid tang of overheated circuits that had seeped in from the engineering deck. Beside her, Jax knelt by the flickering holographic display, his fingers dancing over exposed wiring like a surgeon mid-operation. Almost got it, he muttered, sweat beading on his brow. These alien relays are a nightmare, twisted logic like they're built for minds that think in fractals. Across from them, Dr. Lena Reyes paced the narrow space, her tablet clutched like a shield. Her cautious nature had kept them alive this long, always double-checking scans before they jury-rigged another fix on the derelict station. Now, with the chamber's voices, those eerie, echoing transmissions, swelling through the speakers, her eyes darted to the viewport. Outside, the void pressed in, stars mocking their isolation. Earth's silence had stretched too long. No reply to their distress beacon, just the endless static that clawed at their resolve. The challenge had started as a salvage run gone wrong. The station, a relic from a long-extinct species, trapped in a decaying orbit around a gas giant's pull. Resource shortage hit first, fuel cells depleting faster than predicted, life support flickering as the rival scavenger drone swarm closed in, automated hunters programmed to claim any tech they touched. But it was the chamber at the core, pulsing with those voices, that turned hazard into nightmare. Decoding them had triggered a lockdown, sealing sections and venting atmosphere in unpredictable bursts. Alara's voice cut through the tension, steady but edged. Jax, talk to me. Can we reroute power to the thrusters without blowing the mains? Her bravery showed in the way she didn't flinch when another echo rippled from the comms. A chorus of whispers in an unknown tongue, rising like a tide. You didn't look up, splicing a human-made conduit into the alien grid. Yeah, but it'll be ugly. We'll lose half the NAV systems. Lena, your turn. Verify the containment fields on that chamber. If those voices are AI ghosts or whatever, we don't want them hitchhiking on our signal back home. Lena nodded, her steps measured as she interfaced her tablet with the nearest panel. Data streamed across the screen, anomalous energy spikes, patterns that hinted at the voice's origin. Not malice, but a desperate archive broadcasting pleas across the stars. Earth's silence answered nothing, but perhaps these echoes held a key. Fields holding at 60%, she reported, her tone analytical, hiding the fear that gnawed at her. But the swarm's closing ETA 20 minutes. If we don't break orbit, they'll strip us clean. The first plan had backfired hours ago. They tried isolating the chamber with a makeshift EMP, only for it to amplify the voices, drawing the drones like moths to a flame. Now, adaptation was their grit, human ingenuity against the cold mechanics of space. Elara straightened, plotting a desperate vector on the auxiliary helm. We sink the voices into the beacon. Use them as a jammer against the swarm's sensors. Risky, but it might buy us time. Jax sealed the last connection with a spark, the light steadying overhead. Done. Firing up. The ship shuddered as power surged, thrusters coughing to life. But the voices swelled in response, the chamber's core glowing through the bulkhead monitors, a web of crystalline veins pulsing blue. Lena's tablet beeped urgently. Wait, the patterns are shifting. They're responding to us. Not random. It's like they're learning our code. Elara's heart raced, but she punched the controls. The ship lurched forward, breaking free of the station's weak gravity well. Drones swarmed in the distance, red lights winking like predators' eyes. One clipped their hull, alarms blaring, but Jax slapped overrides, stabilizing the roll. As they pulled away, the voices clarified in the speakers. Not alien gibberish, but fragments of coordinates, warnings etched in math. Earth's silence might have failed them, but this chamber's cry had bridged something. A scar remained. The fuel gauge dipped critically low, stranding them on a vector toward the system's edge. Yet in the quiet that followed the Engine's roar, camaraderie bound them tighter. 3 souls, wits sharp, pushing through the dark. Elena gripped the console edge, her knuckles whitening as the ship's alarms blared in staccato bursts. The void outside the viewport swirled with debris, shards of the alien relay station they'd just sabotaged, now a glittering hazard in the asteroid belt. Jax hunched over the auxiliary panel, his fingers flying across the holographic keys, sweat beading on his forehead despite the recycled air's chill. Rerouting power to the shields, he muttered, voice steady but edged with that familiar wit. If we don't fry the engines first. Captain Reyes stood at the heart of the bridge, her posture unyielding, eyes scanning the tactical display. The Krell fleet, those biomechanical behemoths, had closed the net faster than anticipated. Their initial plan to slip the virus into the relay and vanish into the belt's shadows had backfired spectacularly. The station's self-destruct had pulled in half the enemy squadron like a gravitational snare, and now the humans' frigate danced on the edge of annihilation. Status on the evasion vector? She asked, not turning. Vector's holding, but barely, Elena replied, her cautious nature surfacing in the way she double-checked readings before speaking. They've got 3 cruisers bracketing us. One more hit, and we're venting atmosphere. She glanced at Jax, who shot her a grin that didn't reach his eyes. The camaraderie between them had kept the crew sane through months of covert ops. But this close to the wire, even jokes felt like lifelines fraying. Reyes nodded, her brave resolve a quiet force amid the chaos. She'd led them here, betting on human grit against the Krell's overwhelming tech, those hive-minded warriors who saw individuals as irrelevant cogs. The stakes weren't abstract. Fail, and the relay signal would summon reinforcements to glass Earth's colonies. Success meant a slim window to warn the homeworld, but at what cost? The ship groaned as a proximity mine detonated nearby, the deck shuddering underfoot. Adapt or die, Jax quipped, slamming a fist on the panel to override a failing subroutine. Sparks flew, illuminating his face in brief, harsh light. He jury-rigged the engines earlier with scavenged parts, turning a resource shortage into a makeshift hyperdrive boost. But the Krell adapted too. Their lead cruiser was already modulating shields to counter the debris field. Elena's hands trembled slightly as she plotted an alternate course, weaving through the denser clusters of rock. If we slingshot around that big fragment, a direct hit rocked the ship, red lights flooding the bridge. Consoles sparked, and Reyes braced against the inertial dampener's lag. Damage report. Alarms wailed louder, drowning the hum of failing systems. Hull breach in engineering, Jax coughed, smoke curling from a vent. Sealing it off, but we're losing pressure. He didn't wait for orders, diving into the access hatch with tools in hand, his witty banter replaced by focused determination. Elena met Rhea's gaze, the unspoken weight between them heavy. They'd lost 2 crew already to earlier skirmishes. Real costs, names etched in the manifest. Captain, we can't outrun them. Not like this. Reyes straightened, her mind racing through options. The Krell expected flight, predictable prey. But humans? They turned desperation into defiance. Helm, bring us about. Full burn toward the lead cruiser. Elena's eyes widened. That's suicide, trust the play? Rhea's voice cut through the din, earnest and unyielding. The ship lurched into the maneuver, engines screaming as they charged the enemy like a bull toward a wall. The viewport filled with the Krell vessel's jagged silhouette, its tendrils of sensor webs reaching out. Jax's voice crackled over the comm from below decks. Shields at 20%. I've got a surprise for them, overloading the forward arrays to mimic a surrender beacon. Buy us a second. The cruiser loomed, weapons charging with an ominous glow. Elena's hands steadied on the controls, caution yielding to the moment's pull. Reyes watched the distance close, the tension coiling like a spring. In the silence of their calculated risk, Earth's unyielding spirit echoed, quiet but answering all. The collision alarms peaked as they skimmed the cruiser's flank, Jax's hack feeding false data into its systems. The Krell hesitated, their hive mind parsing the deception. In that heartbeat, the frigate slipped past, debris masking their escape vector into the belt's heart. But the cost lingered. A trailing engine plume betrayed their path, and the Krell reformed pursuit relentless. Reyes allowed a thin smile. They'd bought time, not victory, yet the adaptation felt earned, a spark of ingenuity in the void's cold grasp. The dim glow of the chamber's holographic displays flickered like dying stars, casting long shadows across the faces of the assembled delegates. Ilera gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles white, as the alien voices swelled into a cacophony of demands. The Krell emissary's tentacles writhed in agitation, its bioluminescent eyes pulsing red. Your world's silence condemns you, it hissed through the translator, the words slithering into the air like venom. Earth offers no counter? Then forfeit the claim. Beside her, Jax leaned forward, his jaw set in that stubborn line she knew too well from their academy days. He was the cautious one, always calculating odds, but now his fingers danced over the auxiliary panel, pulling up encrypted feeds from the colony ships. Not silence, he muttered under his breath, just for her. Strategy. The other humans, Captain Lena and tech specialist Marco, huddled close, their breaths shallow in the recycled air. Lena's eyes, sharp and unyielding, scanned the room, while Marco whispered adjustments to the signal array, sweat beading on his brow. The chamber, a vast dome on the neutral station orbiting Viridian Prime, hummed with the weight of a dozen species scrutiny. The challenge had started as a resource dispute over an uncharted asteroid belt, but it had escalated into this. A trial by testimony where Earth's absence from the broadcast left humanity's delegation hanging by a thread. The early plan, to relay a pre-recorded defense, had backfired spectacularly when the Krell jammed the primary channel, turning the human silence into perceived cowardice. Stakes were high. Lose here and the belt's rare isotopes went to the aggressors, starving Earth's fledgling outposts of fuel. Ilera straightened, her voice cutting through the din like a knife. Earth's response is en route. Stand by. She shot Jax a glance, willing him to buy them time. He nodded, activating the backup protocol they jury-rigged in the antechamber. A risky hack using salvaged drone parts to bounce the signal through the station's maintenance vents. It wasn't elegant, no sleek quantum relay, but human grit made do. The Krell delegate recoiled, its form rippling. Lies. Your primitives scramble in the dark. Laughter echoed from the sidelines, the avian thrax chirping mockingly, but Ilera ignored it, focusing on the console's readouts. Marco's hands flew faster, rerouting power from non-essentials. The lights dimmed further, eliciting murmurs. Got a lock, he breathed. Patching through now. Tension coiled in the air, thick as the ozone from overloaded circuits. Lena stepped up, her presence commanding despite her slight frame. We've faced worse than your games, she said evenly, addressing the chamber. Black holes that swallowed fleets, storms that shredded hulls. This is just noise. Her words weren't bravado, they carried the weight of shared scars, the kind that bound their small team tighter than any contract. Then, the speakers crackled. A deep, resonant voice filled the dome, not pre-recorded pomp, but live, unfiltered transmission from Earth. Admiral Reyes patched in from Geneva Command, his tone steady as bedrock. To the Council of Viridian, humanity yields nothing without cause. Our claim stands on survey data, mutual benefit, and the blood of those who charted these stars. Silence was deliberate, time to gather truth, not echoes. The chamber fell hushed. The Krell's eyes dimmed to amber, uncertainty flickering. Jax's hack had worked. The signal pierced the jam, carrying not just words but visuals, holomaps of the belt's shared potential, economic models showing prosperity for all, and footage of human miners toiling in vacuum, their suits scarred but unbroken. Ilara allowed herself a tight smile as the delegates leaned in, the tide shifting. But the cost lingered. Marco slumped, exhausted, the hack having drained the station's auxiliary grid. Alarms would blare soon, drawing security. And the Krell, cornered, might lash out before conceding. Victory hovered, fragile as a breath, demanding one final push. The chamber's vast dome echoed with a hush that felt heavier than any roar. Captain Ilara Voss stood at the center podium, her flight suit still dusted with the red regolith from the landing site, the insignia of the UNS Endurance glinting under the artificial lights. Beside her Dr. Kai Ren adjusted his glasses, his fingers trembling slightly as he clutched the data slate, the last piece of their gamble. Across the curved council ring, the alien delegates shifted in their seats, their multifaceted eyes flickering with uncertainty. Lyriel, the one who had first bridged the language gap, leaned forward, her iridescent skin rippling like oil on water. "You have said nothing," Lyriel murmured, her voice a melodic hum translated through the embedded earpieces. "Earth's silence has tested us as we tested you. But the rift grows. Our worlds hang on this." Ilara met her gaze, the weight of 3 months' isolation pressing on her shoulders. The failed initial negotiations, the sabotage of their comms array by rival factions among the delegates, the dwindling oxygen reserves that had forced them to improvise life support from scavenged parts. Kai's witty quips had kept morale from cracking during those long nights in the habitat module, but now, with the chamber's air recyclers straining against the influx of heated arguments, there was no room for jokes. "We weren't silent," Ilara said finally, her voice steady, carrying the grit of someone who jury-rigged a fusion core under fire. She nodded to Kai, who tapped the slate. Holographic projections bloomed in the air above the podium. Not weapons or threats, but schematics, blueprints of a shared orbital array, woven from human modular tech and the aliens' crystalline harmonics. It was the adaptation they'd forged in secret, after the first plan to beam Earth's archives directly had backfired, alerting the isolationists and nearly dooming their shuttle. The delegates murmured, a wave of chittering and low tones rippling through the assembly. One, a hulking figure from the outer rings with armored plating, slammed a fist on his console. "This is no answer. You presume to build without consensus." Kai stepped forward, his cautious nature yielding to the moment. "It's not presumption. It's proof." He swiped the projection, zooming in on the integration points, human error correction algorithms meshing with their quantum lattices, turning potential failure into resilience. "Your rift, the one tearing at the hyperspace lanes, it's fed by mismatched frequencies. We've adapted our silence into this. A bridge that listens first, speaks second. No empires, no conquest. Just what works." Lyriel rose, her tendrils extending slightly as she interfaced with a nearby panel. The chamber's lights dimmed, then brightened as her scan synced with the hologram. Gasps echoed, affirmative chimes from her kin, a grudging rumble from the skeptic. Ilara felt the tension uncoil in her chest, but not fully. The cost lingered in her mind. The Endurance left in orbit, its crew on half rations, the message they'd finally sent home delayed by the sabotage, Earth's response a faint, hopeful ping across the void. The council chair, an ancient being with eyes like polished obsidian, intoned the verdict. The silence breaks. Integration begins. Applause, human claps mingling with alien resonances, filled the space, but Ilara caught Lyriel's sidelong glance, a flicker of warning. The rival faction wouldn't fade quietly. Scars from the rift's storms would mark their worlds for generations. As they stepped down, Kai clapped Ilara's shoulder. "Earned it, Captain. But next time maybe lead with the witty part." She smirked, the chamber's voice is now a chorus of alliance, Earth's answer etched not in words, but in the quiet hum of a future forged together. Yet in the back of her mind, the silence of home tugged, a reminder that triumph carried its own echoes.